It is exactly 33 minutes past the hour. Welcome back to Sunday Live here at Citizen Television. Now, news from further afield, and as Tuesday's U.S. presidential election draws near, the two leading candidates who are tied in the polls hit the battleground states of Michigan and Pennsylvania.
Republican candidate Donald Trump held a rally in Pennsylvania where he again accused immigrants of committing heinous crimes in the U.S. and claimed non-citizens were participating in the polls.
Now, allegations that have been debunked as false. Now, Trump also slammed an Iowa poll that showed Kamala Harris to be in the lead in the Republican-leaning state.
Promising a new golden age in America, Trump questioned what new thing Kamala will deliver now that she hasn't in the 4 years she's been vice president.
That's right. Following an appearance at Saturday Night Live in New York, Kamala is attending church in Michigan and is scheduled to visit a barber shop in an appeal to black voters. Michigan is a crucial swing state to the Democrats, who risk losing it on account of Israel's actions in Gaza, given its significant Arab American population.
Donald Trump is not done. He would ban abortion nationwide. He would restrict access to birth control. He would put IVF treatments at risk. And get this, force states to monitor women's pregnancies. Just Google Project 2025, which still I can't believe they put in writing.
All right, joining us live in the studio to talk about this and other events, former Principal Secretary for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, former Ambassador Macharia Kamau. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be here.
It's been a minute.
It has been.
Looking good, man. How's retirement?
That's wonderful. I recommend it.
Every time I see you, I remember the Sustainable Development Goals.
That's right. Yes, you're right. But listen, you lived in America for many years. Have you ever seen an election that was this close?
Not quite. American elections do tend to get very close sometimes. The real issue here, of course, is just the level of conflict of ideas and the difference in candidatures that we are now witnessing, and the consequential outcomes of the elections for American domestic politics and subsequently for the world. And I think this is what's gotten everybody's attention. That we are seeing an election. First of all, there's a woman candidate, which is an amazing thing. She happens to be a black woman, which is a spectacular thing. But this is because of a history of 60 years of civil rights movement, of an America that promoted minorities, that promoted women, that promoted people's rights, that embraced immigrants. And we're seeing that being juxtaposed against what is a proposition from the Republican Party led by Donald Trump, which is an America that is anything but those things. We're seeing a lot of attacks on women, issues of women's rights, attacks on minorities, on immigrants. I mean, it's just so stratified. That it makes it really something very, very different in that way. Normally, we would have elections that were campaigning around issues of interest rates, inflation, the economy. Remember Clinton's "It's the economy, stupid" statements way back when. Yeah. This is the kind of things that we were used to. Maybe sometimes even issues of foreign policy against, when we were discussing matters of Russia or of communism, if you go back far enough. More recently, even issues of global health were part of the campaign and became very important, particularly for Africa, where issues of HIV and AIDS were a huge concern 20, 30 years ago. So, it's a very different election in that way. And for the American population, it's really a fundamentally consequential election.
I'm curious, how did it get so close? Because when Kamala replaced Biden as the Democratic candidate, there was an infusion, of energy, or in the polls, the Democrats surged ahead. But now we're looking at literally neck and neck. How did it get here?
First of all, I think that's normal. I think in all cases, whenever you have a new face, whenever you have a new person and new energy in the campaign, you always get a bump in the numbers. People actually pay attention. People who may have been indifferent suddenly are like, wow, this is interesting. And then, of course, the other side then begins to campaign directly dealing with the consequences of this new entry into the electoral process. Until then, they were focused all their energies on the Biden campaign and who Biden was and what he represented. And I think, I don't know whether it was a conscious decision on the part of the Democrats. If it was, then it was genius, political genius. But for them to have flipped that and put Kamala on the ticket was simply amazing. And to have put a woman who is not only incredibly articulate, but who understands the American experience in a very unique and special way. And that's why she's able to articulate those issues so forcefully. But now, the Republicans, of course, have had a systemic counter campaign targeted at her positions, at who she is, at what she represents. In fact, it's just inflamed some of those issues that had to do with immigrants, that have to do with minorities, that have to do with privilege, although there's nothing privileged about Kamala's rise, through the years.
And Balozi, on top of that, this campaign has been so divisive. I mean, it's split America literally down the middle. I was in Dallas about 3-4 months ago, and you could tell, Dallas, a red state, red as in Republican. So much divisiveness. When you go back to Obama's time in 2008, there was a lot of optimism. Now you can tell there's almost hatred, for lack of a better word.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's fair to say that the Trump campaign has really been focused on very hateful rhetoric. And in many, many ways, they have challenged the whole idea of America's democracy. They have challenged the whole idea of America as an inclusive state for all people. They have challenged the idea of America as a haven for those who are seeking to be free and who are yearning for freedom. All these ideas that were so fundamentally Pax Americana have now been challenged in very, very forceful ways by a man who does not spare his words when he's speaking on these issues. So it's really shocked the psyche of America. And that's why it's become so divisive. And, all populist politics are divisive by nature, whether they are in Africa, in Europe, in America. They are divisive, and that's just how they are.
But you agree with those who say this is an existential election, such that it marks either a break with the past or a retrogression? Because you have Kamala, Trump supporters say she's pushing abortion. She would, enhance LGBTQ access in America, and all these anti-conservative positions they accuse her of having. Do you view it as an existential election?
First of all, I would not conflate the issues of women's rights and of minority rights, of sexual rights, with an existential threat. I think that's a ploy. I think that's part of the misrepresentation that the Republicans would like to see played out there. There's nothing existential about, people's rights. People's rights are people's rights. Minority rights. But there is something tragic when a campaign begins to, as I said earlier, divide people along issues that define people's individuality. Who am I as an American person? If I'm African American, do I have the right to be there? Do I have the right to rise through the ranks and to become a female president of the United States of America? That should never be questioned. It should not arise in a modern America. Who am I if I'm going to be an immigrant who is coming from a horrific situation, say in Central America, and I'm trying to find freedom, and I'm trying to get a better future for my children? Who am I to be defined as being a hateful person, a destroyer of society? I mean, the whole history of American immigration has been a history of wonderful consequences for the American society, for the American economy. America remains a competitive economy in many, many ways, especially in the labor market, because of immigration. I mean, in Europe, they're suffering because of a lack of immigration, even though they're so hateful of immigrants there too. But, you know, it is true that for people, for the ordinary people, it's very easy to pull these chains. You know, black people are taking our jobs. I mean, immigrants are taking our jobs. I am really concerned for our Kenyans in America who are now citizens. They're immigrants. Our diaspora. They have a right to be there. Just like every single American, except the Native Americans, is themselves at the core an immigrant. Donald Trump's family came from Scotland and Germany, and I believe some parts of England.
Correct. 3
immigrant streams that went into America in the middle of the last millennium.
His wife.
His wife. I mean, she's a recent immigrant.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's full of contradictions. It's full of hypocrisy. But it's what makes it so complex and so divisive and so sad.
Balozi, real quick, just to explain to Kenyans, this is not a 50+1 situation with the elections, right? In 2016, Hillary won the popular vote, but there's something called collegiate votes. So they go state by state by state by state, and whoever gets to the number 270, the magical number, is the one who wins the election, right? Is it going to be obvious?
Actually, you know, this has always been a challenge because it was meant to be a check and balances system to try to make sure that small states were not always overwhelmed by the larger states, the Californias and the New Yorks of this world. And so they tried to come up with a system of trying to bring some balance to how the voting system works. It's never really been a very, very good system. And it's created a lot of challenges for America. But all states, in fact, the Democrats have traditionally won more collegial votes, or at least one would say that there were more blue states, collegial votes, you know, about 220 some, were always pretty secure Democratic. And the Republicans usually had about 219, 220. And the sort of the ones that were, you know, on the margins rather, were 93 collegial states, mainly from Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, North Carolina, and so on and so forth, the ones you mentioned a little earlier. So it's going to come into play. But when I looked at it the other day, just out of curiosity, it looks like the Democrats are very focused on this, as are the Republicans. And at the Senate level, it looks like, you know, we may have, you know, right, you know, all I'm saying is I think there's still a very good chance that if you're a Kamala supporter that the collegiate vote will go your way. There's still a real chance. It's not a lost cause, is what I'm saying.
What will this election eventually, to your mind, come down to? Will it be the state of the economy? Because Trump supporters say the economy was doing better under Trump. Those who support the Democrats say the Democrats just haven't properly enunciated or made the case for how they've improved the economy. There's a question of immigration that we mentioned earlier. There's a question of women's rights, reproductive rights. What do you think it'll come down to?
Well, it's definitely not going to be the economy unless you're ignorant of the facts. The American economy has literally been booming for the last 10 years, 15 years. It's been a powerhouse. It has grown to the point where it is now, it's always been a big economy, but now it's outperformed all the other economies on most of the indicators. Inflation is at its lowest for years. The size of the economy has grown to the point where it's bigger than China and Europe put together. You can even throw in Japan if you want. America is a powerhouse economy. So there is no question in my mind that even though the average American might not be feeling the huge benefit of this great economy that has been unfolding because of certain structures within the economy, and because there tends to be an over-accumulation at the top end among the elite, among the wealthy, of the benefits of the economy. Even though that is the case, I don't think that will be the real issue. Because
when you listen to the man on the street, for example, Pennsylvania is a critical swing state. They have 19, I think, of the 7 swing states, they have 19 electoral college votes. And some of the big issues, there are unemployment, inflation, I think, is highest in Pennsylvania. So the cost of living, they say life has, when you listen to the man on the street, just watching this international news broadcast, they say life has gotten more expensive under Biden.
Like I said, it depends where you're sitting and and how you are experiencing this economy. But if you look at the overall indicators of the United States, they have been quite impressive. I was reading an article in The Economist the other day, and I wish I had actually come with it if I had known we'd go down this particular track, because it was emphasizing just how phenomenal the economy has been, juxtaposed against Europe, Japan, and even China, and how the comeback from the COVID experience has been the most powerful of any global economy. But, it's like in our own country. There are people who never feel the benefit of this economy. You may have a boom period, but there are people who will always be somewhere in the various rungs of society who will simply not be beneficial to the benefits that befall the economy. In other words, the trickle down doesn't trickle down equally to everybody.
Balozi, for like a decade and a half, you were the point man for Kenya. Internationally, everywhere Kenya was, you featured. No matter who wins on Tuesday, how will that affect U.S.-Kenya relations?
Actually, we are in the eye of the storm, so we're right in the middle. By which I mean that all this is raging, but I think for Kenya, the consequences are really marginal in the short run. And that's important to remember. I don't expect, whether it's a Republican outcome or a Democratic outcome, that there's going to be any significant change in the way in which U.S.-Kenya relations proceed. In fact, I think there tends to be more consequence with our elections because of the way in which certain choices are made within our body politic vis-a-vis the United States of America. So, but if you look at the bilateral trade agreements, the security arrangements that we've had, issues of health, they remain more or less on an even keel. Now, the reason I say, and you will even remember that even during Donald Trump's presidency, the First Lady came here. It's one of the few countries that she visited in Africa. Donald Trump himself never came out and had very little good to say about African countries. But nonetheless, when President Uhuru Kenyatta went then, he was very well received by Donald Trump. Extremely well received, and in fact, they got along very well and very positively. And then we saw again recently when President Ruto went, his state visit was considered historic and significant. Yeah. And again, he was given pride of place as one of the first to be received from the African continent. So for Democrats or Republicans, Kenya is too important, too unique, too well situated to be used as a ploy in their domestic issues and in their foreign policy. I think there will be more consequences for countries like, for their relations, for the United States relations with countries like China, for example, on the issue of Ukraine, for example. In the Middle East, you know, Israel can do no wrong in the eyes of the United States, and that has consequences. I heard you mention a little earlier, I think it was you actually, Jeff, when you mentioned about Michigan, and you said, you know, that they're so upset with the Biden administration. You know, I don't think the Arab Americans are silly enough to imagine that it would have been any different with a Donald Trump.
So you don't think the Green Party is a threat, Jill Stein?
A threat?
Mm-hmm. To the Democrats getting them, because the margins are so slim.
There might be spoilers.
Yeah.
But they would have to be very narrow-minded and very nearsighted to use their vote in that way. Because, as you say, the election is so, I use the word consequential. I don't think it's an existential threat. Because I don't think America is going anywhere, so it'll remain in existence. But I think it'll be very consequential, especially in the medium term. Should we have a Donald Trump presidency, should he pursue his policies on the judiciary, on changing the Constitution, on curbing migrants' rights, on women's rights. These are consequential things to the American society. And it can be a very different America in 4 years' time.
Yeah. So you say Kenya, in the short term, doesn't have much to worry about. Yeah. Because I asked that because we have the Haiti Mission, Kenya-led Haiti Mission, which is currently funded significantly by America. We have the climate change agenda. Trump, has shown himself to be a climate change denier. So, given all these eggs we have in these baskets, we should not be worried?
Well, one should always be worried. The question is, what are you going to worry about? So, for example, the Haiti Mission, I don't think that's going anywhere. I think both parties, when we were in the Security Council, in the last administration, the issue of Kenya's engagement in Haiti was already on the table. It was a logical sequence of events that would lead us to our very forceful voice in the Security Council on issues of how important it was to protect the rights of the Haitian people, and how terrible it was that the Haitian people had suffered such neglect from the international community. To be able to voice that in the Security Council, it was then logical that you are going to be asked, okay, so what do you want to do about it? And it was going to lead to where we are today. A lot of people had grave misgivings about Kenya's Haitian mission. You know,
still do.
I am personally, and I understand why Kenyans don't understand why that is important. You know, we have enough problems of our own. You know, Why are we going where we don't belong or whatever? But you know, we have such an amazing history. People forget of peacekeeping. Kenya has been a stellar contributor in Europe. You know, in the struggles that were happening in Serbia and in Czechoslovakia, what used to be former Czechoslovakia, when that was breaking up. I mean, Kenya was right there in West Africa, in Sierra Leone, in Liberia. We led missions. In Namibia, we led missions. We brought these countries to peace, for Christ's sakes. If you take this narrow, attitude that, just take care of your own neighborhood and, the hell with everybody else, it's the kind of attitude that makes you not appreciate that we live in a globalized world. We're in a global community, and we have responsibilities. And Kenya has been excellent. And I, for one, believe for sure that the Haiti Mission will succeed. Not only will it succeed, but it will be exemplary.
Balozi, clearly, you miss your old days on the stage, don't you?
No, I do not. I can tell you for a fact, I am very happy doing what I'm doing right now.
It's good to see you, Balozi.
It's good to see you, too.
Fantastic. Ambassador Macharia Kamau, former PS for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, former ambassador. Well, once an ambassador.
Always an ambassador.
There you go. Thanks so much for your insights. And keep tweeting. We're going to take a quick break, come back. There's still more news and sports at Koinange Jeff.
At Burrows at Citizen TV Kenya.
The hashtag is Sunday Live. Sunday Live takes a break. We'll be back. In the meantime, coming up.